able to ask during this meeting, or come up with questions or thoughts or things after this meeting, feel free to email them to me or to NDOT, and I will share that over with them. My email, it's just kathleen.murphy@nashville.gov. I'll also go ahead and drop that into the chat box. And primarily, the reason I requested this meeting is because I had several emails come in of people having further questions, some concerns, and just kind of wanting to know about the overall process. And so what I'm going to ask NDOT to do is kind of, if y'all will give an overview briefly of how we got here, because I think most neighbors know that process, so we don't want to spend too much time on that. But then if you will just jump into what exactly the plans are, and then afterwards
Yeah.
explaining what the next steps for neighbors are, whether they support or not. And so I will, probably on behalf of NDOT, I'll go ahead and ask if everybody doesn't mind if you mute yourself during the meeting. I know that NDOT has control to whoever's hosting. Y'all can help mute if someone can't mute themselves. And then I'll just let NDOT take it from here.
Thank you very much. Chris, did you want to give an introduction and then I'll take it from there?
Yeah, I definitely can. My name's Chris Sandwith. I manage the program within Nashville Department of Transportation, our neighborhood traffic calming program. So with me, I have Brad Waldschmidt and Laura Kelly. They're two of the engineering consultants that are helping me with this traffic calming program. And yes, we've been working with y'all since I think we had our first meeting back in October, and just excited to show the plan and to answer any questions or concerns you may have with it. So with that, I'll hand it off to you, Brad, to go through the presentation.
Thanks, Chris. So again, my name is Brad. We want to spend about 10 minutes giving an overview. Councilmember Murphy alluded to it. We want to give an overview of the application that was submitted by Cherokee Park, how the neighborhood was selected, the streets that we're looking at.
I don't hear anything anymore. Are we online or not?
Gotcha.
I can hear you. I can hear you, Brad. Can everybody else? Okay, I see nodding heads. Go ahead.
Let's see. I think that was Brenda who may have said that. Brenda, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, there may have been a lag. My apologies. So what we're going to do is talk about the application that was submitted by Cherokee Park a few years ago, how the neighborhood was selected, the streets that we're looking at, and then we'll also go over the design and the current petition process. That is what's currently underway right now. A few housekeeping things. We are recording this meeting so for a few residents by request who are not able to attend. So this is being recorded. Just want to make sure everyone was aware of that. If you do have comments or questions, there's a few different ways we can handle. We have 31 participants, which is a wonderful turnout. There's a few different ways you can leave your comments. If you're on my computer, I can see in the bottom right corner a little kind of conversation bubble. And when I hover it over it, it says chat. If you can see that, feel free to click on that and post in the chat. There is also 3 circles in the bottom right corner next to it on my computer, where if you click on them, it says Q&A. You're also free to post your questions there. If you'd like to speak, we certainly want to support that. We're now up to 34 people, which is awesome. But to make sure to manage everybody who wants to speak, we're going to ask that you use the hand raise function. Again, on my computer, it's sort of on the bottom, kind of near the middle. There's a little bit of a hand raise. So we're going to do our best to sort of manage the hand raises to make sure everyone can kind of speak or ask their question. Yes, Catherine McGill is doing a great example right there. Yes. So if you could use the hand raise option, that'll help us so we can make sure we hear everybody, don't have multiple people talking. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get in it. I'm going to work to share my screen. And with technology, I always want to check. So as it's showing up here, I want to ask Councilmember Murphy, are you able to see my screen with the Cherokee Park traffic calming slide?
I am. I can see
Okay.
it.
Then I'm going to assume, thank you. I'm going to assume everybody can see it then. So first of all, traffic calming, NDOT, we're focusing on residential streets and we're looking at physical solutions to help reduce speeds and focus on the cut-through traffic that's happening in several of our neighborhoods. So the application, Cherokee Park submitted an application a few years ago, about 2.5 years ago. 11 residents all signed it and put their contact information supporting it. And these 3 streets were what was on that application: Cherokee Road, Aberdeen Road, and Valley Road. So neighborhoods, many neighborhoods submit applications for traffic calming, and this was kind of what y'all's was, Cherokee Park. And so this is a map that just pretty much shows those 3 streets, and I'll get into the colors in just a minute on a few slides. But this shows Cherokee, Aberdeen, and Valley that was on your application. So Nashville is very popular. The traffic calming program gets many applications. Metro Council does a great job at funding the program. So how does NDOT determine which neighborhoods get in? Well, we look at a prioritization process. We collect traffic data to see how fast vehicle speeds are. We look at crashes, how many crashes are happening on these streets. We also look at things like, are there sidewalks along the street or not? And we also look at, are there places people are walking to, such as a park very close to you all, or schools or churches, which you also have. So all of those are criteria that every neighborhood that submits for traffic calming gets looked at with this prioritization process. And through that process, Cherokee Park was one of the neighborhoods that was selected back in August of 2021. We did have our first meeting. The attendance, I want to say, was between 8 or 10 people, maybe between 10 and 15 people on WebEx back in October. And then members of NDOT also conducted a walking tour with some of those residents that were on that October call that wanted us to walk with them. And actually, we walked every single street that was on that application and a few others to really kind of get an understanding of the physical the attributes, as well as kind of hear their own experiences. So that's sort of the backstory of what we've done. Through that conversation, Mayfair Road and Lauderdale Road were also added for something we were looking at. We added those 2 streets, given all that. So Cherokee, Aberdeen, and Valley from y'all's application, and then from the meeting 1 and the walking tour also looked at Lauderdale and Mayfair. And so our recommendations are radar speed feedback signs and speed cushions. These pictures give an example of radar speed feedback signs. This is what we've recommended for Cherokee Road. That is the only street on this map where we are recommending there's these radar speed feedback signs. Just want to make sure people kind of see an example of what these are. The other 4 streets, Aberdeen, Valley, Lauderdale, and Mayfair, we recommended speed cushions. These are things that go in the road that cars must travel over, and they are intended to be a vertical, physical thing that cars must travel over with the intent of managing vehicle speeds better on the street. And we're going to get to the design. I'm going to bring that onto the screen in just a minute to kind of show more exactly where these locations are. But these are sort of what they look like really close. So that is the design. I'm going to bring it over in just a slide. I want to make sure people understand the petition process, which is what the design is in right now. Each street has a separate petition. Cherokee Road does not have one because there's not something physical going in the street. But the other 4 that speed cushions are proposed on, again, Aberdeen, Valley, Mayfair, and Lauderdale, each of them have a separate petition for each street. And the only eligible people who can sign in support of speed cushions are the property owners along each of those streets. And if speed cushions are going to be installed on any of these streets, 70% of the property owners along each street must sign the petition and send it back to us at NDOT, and we review it. That is the petition process that is set up so that when a design is prepared, NDOT can clearly understand that the majority of a street wants what has been proposed. So that's currently the phase that Cherokee Park is in. I want to go ahead and address one question that we do get asked quite frequently. Why are we not just doing stop signs? Why not stop signs for traffic calming? And there's a few reasons. The first is this is a picture of every road and traffic engineer's main reference manual that's used across the United States. And this is a direct quote from that manual. Stop signs are not intended for speed control. They're intended to designate right-of-way at an intersection, and there are engineering studies to determine which streets should have stop signs, and even when an all-way stop should be installed. But it clearly says speed control is not one of them. Additionally, beyond that, there have been studies done in the United States that shows that when stop signs are inappropriately used for traffic calming, there can actually be the opposite effect. The speeders sometimes will get aggravated and want to actually drive faster between the stop signs, which you're increasing speed now on some parts of the road, or they disobey the stop sign and don't actually come to a complete stop and just roll through it, which is also a big concern that NDOT does not want to promote or support that. So this is one question we get. We wanted to make sure we highlighted this on the front end. One last thing we want to cover on, and I promise the next slide, we're going to bring the design over onto the screen here. The locations for the speed cushions, how does NDOT determine these? How did we look at that? The first thing we do is we make sure they're spaced appropriately enough away from stop signs. If cars are supposed to be stopping at a stop sign, we try not to put them 25 feet away from a stop sign. The next thing we try to do, we try to space them an appropriate spacing around 400 feet or so from each other. That distance can vary, but we try to space them apart from each other so they're not too close or not too far apart. We also work to not design these speed cushions, in this case, in intersections or driveways. We desire for cars to be driving over these going straight and not having to be turning or backing out and turning left or right over them. So that was the main design criteria for how we approach these Cherokee Park streets and really any street in Nashville that's in the traffic calming program. So what I want to do right now, and then kind of want to open up the floor to questions and discussion if needed. So I want to bring over the design, and again, I'm just going to ask Councilmember Murphy. I want to make sure you can see is the aerial with purple lines showing up on the screen? Excellent.
It is, yes.
Excellent. I apologize. That's the last time I'll check with you. Technology, I always want to make sure. So thank you very much. So this shows an overview of the 5 streets that we're talking about, as well as very high level where these are located. I'm going to go through these, each one. We have more zoomed in photos. So I kind of want to zoom in a little more and just kind of demonstrate to people. So this is Cherokee Road. It's a little confusing. This is the railroad right here. This is kind of the north side. And you can see we're proposing a radar speed feedback sign on Cherokee as you're going south toward West End. And I'm going to keep, the next sheet's going to keep going south. Now you can see West End's over here. There's another radar speed feedback sign as you're going northbound toward McCabe and the railroad. So these are what's proposed on Cherokee. You can see there are street numbers that are showing what address that these are going to be being proposed to be in front of. I just want to call your attention to that. So as we go through, you can sort of pick out where other devices are at. And again, if there's Q&A later, we can certainly bring this back up and point to a certain location. Happy to do that. Next, I want to go to Aberdeen Road. So right over here on that's the all-way stop of Cherokee and Aberdeen. So between Mockingbird and Cherokee, there's 2 locations of speed cushions. I'm going to try to zoom in just a little bit. I'm hoping that might help just a tad for some people. 2 locations of speed cushions along Aberdeen, again, between Cherokee and Mockingbird. And again, for reference, we put the street numbers just so people have an understanding of the locations based on the design criteria that I just talked about for why those locations have been chosen. And again, we definitely can go in more detail with the Q&A. I just want to give an overview. Now we're over on the east side of Aberdeen, Aberdeen between Mockingbird and North Wilson Boulevard. There is 1 location that these are being proposed. Again, the only reason that the location has been proposed is because that design criteria, there is opportunities to adjust those by 1 parcel or a few parcels if there's an alternative location that works better. This is what we found based on our design, but there could be a few other options in that area. Next, I want to go over to Valley Road. right here is the intersection of Cherokee and Valley. What we're proposing is, many of you know, when you're on Valley Road, you currently stop when you're on Valley. You stop at Lauderdale, and then you just go straight through Mockingbird, and then you stop at Mayfair. So what we have proposed is to put speed cushions sort of on either side of Mockingbird, since the longest stretch, I'm going to try to zoom in just a little bit, see if that helps. So the longest stretch between the Lauderdale stop sign on Valley and the Mayfair stop sign, if people want to try to speed, which they should not, but if people do try, the speed cushions are there to sort of manage that speed. And then I'm going to go to one more, a little bit to the east on Valley Road. There's one location of speed cushions on Valley between Mayfair and North Wilson Boulevard. Now, what this sheet also shows, you see there's a few speed cushions on Mayfair as well. Because of as they're coming from West End, as you're going downhill on Mayfair, we heard some concerns about residents, about people, drivers picking up speed on Mayfair. So there's a speed cushion location on Mayfair that's being designed or proposed just south of Valley, and then another location that's north of Valley, and that's what you can see right there. Then we have Lauderdale Road. Lauderdale, I apologize, I'm trying to make sure I get my bearings. Yes, so you know what you can see West End North's kind of going to the right. I apologize for the north arrow rotations here. We've proposed a few different locations of speed cushions for Lauderdale based on some resident input and feedback that we heard, both during our first meeting and some of the walking tour as well, both with people we were walking with and residents that live on Lauderdale. So in response to that, we've proposed, and there's a few sheets here, so please bear with us here. One speed cushion location in Lauderdale just south of Valley. I'm going to go to the next sheet now. A couple of speed cushions north of Valley. One that's kind of north of Valley by 5 houses, and then another set right before that curve. It may be 90 degrees. I think it's actually a little more than 90-degree curve. A set of speed cushions before that curve on Lauderdale, and then actually another set from the opposite side of the curve. So if cars, they should not be speeding, but if cars are wanting or desiring to speed, these speed cushions would be managing the speeds kind of entering that curve that we've heard so much about. And then as you cross through Mockingbird, this is the last sheet, a few locations as well. One between Mockingbird and Mayfair, and another between Mayfair and Aberdeen. Now, one thing I do want to make sure we comment on is we have heard some concerns about drainage. I think Lauderdale is one location where we've heard that. At this point, NDOT's been deploying these speed cushions in several neighborhoods throughout Nashville. NDOT has not received complaints yet regarding drainage and any drainage problems that are created or exacerbated by speed cushions. There may be a first time for everything, but we have not seen that or heard that concern yet. What we will say is that if a location ever gets speed cushions in Nashville, and NDOT hears and determines that's causing some sort of drainage concern, the speed cushions would get addressed, possibly removed. I just want to address that we have not heard that concern after installation yet, but we recognize it may be possible, and we would be willing to monitor and address that if needed. So that was one other thing we wanted to make sure we touched on. So I think at that point, that is all we kind of wanted to present. I said 10 minutes. It's more like 19. I appreciate your patience, everyone. We do want to now make sure we give the floor open to the residents. And I've asked Laura, who's part of our consultant team, to kind of help me monitor the hand raising and maybe the chat boxes. Chris Sandwith, you're free to do that as well. I'm sharing a screen, so I can't really see that. So I'm going to ask Laura if you could kind of help call on people who are raising their hands so we can hear from them.
Yeah.
Brad, before we get into that, can y'all resend these layout sheets to me, and I'm happy to send them out to my listserv and make sure they get on the Cherokee Park listserv. What I have kind of forgotten from the bird's eye view of these is how many trees we have in Cherokee Park. And so a view like the one you're showing now, that may be a little bit more helpful to zoom in as we're talking, because once you get kind of where it's more in the GIS, it's really hard. It's hard for me, at least, to kind of figure out where we are because we have so many trees. So maybe we need to stick to this, a view similar to what you have right now, because that is a lot easier to see. But neighbors, as you all ask your questions, if you need them to flip pictures to a different screen, feel free. But maybe, Brad, right before we hand it over to go through the neighbors' questions, let's just confirm. So all of those little C's, they look like little C's to me, little pyramids with C's, those are the speed cushions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Y'all are welcome to get into neighbor questions. Thank you.
Right. Laura, can you guide us, please, since I cannot see that?
Yes. We'll start with Catherine McGill, has her hand raised.
Thank you. I've got a question. What type of study has been done to determine the number of cars that go down these streets? I live on Mayfair, and we have literally, my office is the front office, and I can see right out the window, and I probably count 6 to 8 cars a day that go down Mayfair. And I'm not seeing any speeding. So, it kind of, and then I see that like some of the streets in here, like Mockingbird has been deleted totally, and that's a street totally, which probably even gets more traffic than Mayfair. So I'm just a little confused about that. I'm not comfortable with that.
Excellent. Thank you for your question, Catherine. So you asked about the data. So you may recall the original application had Cherokee Road, Aberdeen Road, and Valley Road. Traffic data was collected. It was a few years ago. It was before the pandemic, but traffic was collected on Cherokee Road and Aberdeen Road. We did note Valley Road did not have data collected, but Cherokee and Aberdeen did. So as far as what data was available, those are the two streets. Now, regarding the inclusion of streets like Mayfair and Lauderdale, and the exclusion of Mockingbird, that was based on resident input and experiences and feedback. And the design that we have presented fits within the available budget in the neighborhood traffic calming program. And so we did not have a problem with proposing a few additional locations. And the volume being low is a very good point. But, given that a fast moving car possibly hitting a pedestrian can have really bad impacts. NDOT is committed, especially with the Vision Zero safety initiative, of trying to make every road safer, even lower volume streets. And so Mayfair may be an example of that.
We don't have any data. I've gone back and looked. There's no data of really any accidents on Mayfair Road or any pedestrian issues that have been hit there. So that's something that troubles me. And I understand that, Valley's very busy, and if people feel, but, I just don't understand this. I see people on bicycles in front of the house, walking every day, constantly, tons of people. And I think that the cushions on Mayfair would be more of a problem to those people going around them, or trying to have kids on bicycles and tricycles trying to ride over them, or cars trying to swerve to get around them, and people. I just really am opposed to that. So, I mean, I don't think it's money that needs to be spent on Mayfair. At least that's my opinion. I think I'd like to see some kind of study, if that's the case, to prove to me, because I sit here every day and I don't see cars. I mean, I literally sit here every day.
Right. Okay. No, thank you very much for those comments.
Okay. Thank you.
Brad, we have Jeff Jones, hands raised.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I was Mockingbird. Currently live and have lived for 25 years on the corner of Mayfair and Valley. And this, this is just, it's points. Off the house at the corner of Mayfair and Valley. And that's because they come from Central Avenue, and there are four-way stops at every single location until it reaches that point. So they are going down the street, hitting four-way stop, getting Valley, and they think the other people are going to stop, and they don't. My fence has been torn up 3 or 4 times in the last 3 years. People are hit. And I know you say, and the books say that you shouldn't do, but realistically, and people go through four-way stops when they get off of 440. They get up from 440. They'll get on. If you keep it consistent till you get to Cherokee Road, it's going to be a lot safer and it's going to slow traffic. That's my first point. The second point is when this subdivision was 1928, it was designed for all the water to flow from the homes to the streets, stay in the streets. And we have only one on Lauderdale and the rest are on Valley Road. So all the storm drainage water, the one you've got set for Jack, poor Jack, he's going to get flooded if you put speed at his little low area in front of his house. So if it hasn't been signed off by a engineer that knows drainage, you're basically blocking the drainage on the main part of Cherokee Park, which is Valley Road. And we do not have culverts. And if it's supposed to go into the streets and stay in the streets and then start these rubber barriers, it's going to shoot it and we're going to have erosion between the street and people's yards. It's an ill-conceived design. If we just did stop signs along Valley, and actually, I want to make one more point. There's never been anything Mayfair reaches Lauderdale because that's no longer Mayfair. There needs to be either a yield, and then when you're coming from Aberdeen on the Lauderdale, and then to there needs to be either a stop sign or another yield. So there need proper signage that's never been put up there. But my recommendation is just do stop sign from 440 to Cherokee Road, and it would lead most of all the speeding in the neighborhood. The other thing that I noticed, Aberdeen, Aberdeen is a little dangerous because it's skinny, doesn't have proper drainage. There's one massive oak tree that's encroaching into the street and a big magnolia that cuts the visibility. I would recommend clearing or raising the camp at one tree to see through the road, but not been thought out properly, in my opinion. And I'll leave it at that.
Hey, Brad, this is Kathleen Murphy. Let me interject. Mr. Jones, your feed was cutting in and out pretty severely, at least for me. So if you don't mind, please send us an email with some more of those thoughts because I'm not sure if everybody heard all of them. In regards to this drainage issue, I heard you, Brad, your comment in the presentation was if there's a drainage problem, we'll just rip them up. What that sounds like to me is an expensive experiment. Is stormwater not reviewing these projects before you move forward?
I'm going to that meeting. And
I understand your question, Council Murphy. Chris Sandwith, I'm going to defer to you on to make sure we get this answer correct regarding if Stormwater Division reviews these.
They typically do not. I did check with them specifically because of the questions we were getting on Lauderdale, and let them sent the design to them. They did not have any issues when I sent it to them of what we have designed. But If that's something that, we need to have checked, we can send that their way as well, again, to make sure, triple check that we're okay with the design.
So let's approach it this way. So I will have y'all verify that I have the right list of homes that the speed cushions are proposed in front of, and we'll reach out to those constituents, and we can have Stormwater come out and look at the individual locations on site with us if those property owners would like to do that before the petition timeline closes.
Councilmember Murphy, I will say that one issue with that is where the cushions are shown are subject to change before final installation. For instance, if any of these streets achieve the 70% property owner's signature, but the cushions are currently shown on our plan in front of a parcel that does not support the cushions, NDOT works to try to relocate the location if it still satisfied the traffic calming initiatives, to relocate them if possible to a nearby location such that it would be in front of someone's house who was in support of the traffic calming petition. So I can't speak for NDOT on the stormwater site visits, but that is one.
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that? Did I hear you say that, like, so if Lauderdale receives 70%, but the specific parcel does not want it in front of their property, then it won't be in front of their property? Did I mishear you? I want to make sure we're characterizing that correctly.
NDOT works very hard to make that what happens, Councilmember Murphy. So that if it's shown in front of somebody's house who was not supportive, but the entire street, 70% or more, supports it, NDOT works to coordinate with that resident and other residents to try to find an alternative location that is in close proximity to that location so that it is in front of somebody's property when practical, I believe. And Chris Sandwith, I want to ask you to come off of mute. Can you confirm that's the correct policy and that NDOT has successfully done that in the past with other neighborhoods?
Correct. Yeah, we can't make any promises. If it doesn't fit our engineering design, we have to install it where we have it designed. But if we can move
Right.
it one
So
parcel.
Let's make something clear, and then we can talk about this offline, so we can get to other questions. But I do think that it is a bit much to ask neighbors to vote and sign whether they want these cushions or not if they don't know whether it's going to be in front of their house or not. So I can work out those details with y'all via email, but I do think that we are going to have further conversations, because it is not fair to ask these neighbors to decide whether they want, if this is the plan, then that needs to be the plan that they're signing. So NDOT needs to flesh that out some more. We'll talk about that offline and send out a more accurate statement to the neighbors. So, but we can get back to neighbor questions.
Okay. Laura, can you help us more with hand raising?
Yes. The next person I saw was Brenda. Brenda, you're on mute still. Oh, there you go. Okay.
How many total homes are involved on each street? Can you give me a breakdown?
Laura, I want to
Yeah.
ask, have you done that count?
Yes, on Mayfair, the total properties are 18, Lauderdale is 94, Valley is 26, Aberdeen is 64.
And how many do you have so far in favor?
So the petition is a neighborhood-led effort, and so I don't remember if it was Grace or Paige or Mark. One of them has the hard copy petitions in hand and has been the one leading the petition signature gathering. And then NDOT, we receive those once they're completed. So I don't know if Mark's on the phone call or not, but he may be the better person on the current status of that.
Oh, I have one more question. Sorry, you said 18 on Mayfair, 94 on Lauderdale, 26 on Valley, and how many on Aberdeen?
64.
64. So you would need 70% on each of those streets, or 70% total?
So the petition is for each street separately. So 70% on each street. So there is a scenario in which two streets may succeed and 2 streets may not succeed, or any combination of that. So it is not a full neighborhood petition. It is each street being focused on at once.
So
Each street
you're telling me it could just go on Aberdeen, for example, and not go on any of the other streets.
that is possible.
Okay, I'm not in favor of this. I think it is very much an eyesore. I think that we need stop signs at every intersection before you go to a drastic, expensive installation of these items that you're discussing putting in our neighborhood. They are very unattractive. They are dangerous for the fire trucks, which come down our streets quite often just to even make a run to keep the fire trucks running. They will come through our neighborhood just to ride their trucks. And you're going to block those streets, block that access for our fire department. And it's going to slow down the response times. And this is a neighborhood that's been here, the very first neighborhood outside of the city limits. It was built in the 1920s. And you are going to come in here and destroy the beautiful neighborhood we live in by putting these on the streets. I think you need to first start with stop signs, yield signs at Lauderdale, where the Lauderdale and Aberdeen meet. There are many other ways to solve this without ruining the beautification of our neighborhood, which we all have loved so much. And it's just a pity that a group of 11 people can do this to our neighborhood. That's all I have to say, and I'm very much opposed to it.
Brenda, thank you very much for your comments. One thing I do want to add in response, Brenda, is you mentioned the 11 residents who are doing this to the neighborhood. The 11 residents did submit the application.
That's what you told me. Yeah.
But I just want to make sure I say, well, the 70% petition is required for signatures. And so I think it would be fair to say 11 residents submitted the application, which is why we're here talking today, but it does take 70%.
And you don't know how many you have at this time. You
Correct.
can't give me an answer.
NDOT does not lead the petition process. It's the neighborhoods that are leading it.
Okay, and who has the petition for those that are against this? Or do you only have petitions for those that are in favor of this?
So the petition, people can sign it either in support, in opposition, or a blank response. We do not count that toward in support.
So if I text y'all or email y'all, that doesn't count if it's not on a petition?
We will use that when we check the petitions if they get submitted to make sure that your address is correctly shown. You're free to communicate that to us if you would like.
That I'm not in favor.
If you're free to communicate that to us, and we'll make sure we check that whenever we do get the petitions to make sure that matches.
Brad, one other thing. A long time ago, they put the historic overlay on this neighborhood. It divided this neighborhood in half. You had neighbors that were in favor, neighbors that were not in favor, and some of those neighbors still don't speak to each other to this day. You know, this is not something that is bringing our community together. This is a wonderful community to live in, and we need to work on things that bring the community together, not things that bring us apart. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments, Brenda. Laura, who's the next person?
Right. I want to stop. There's a chat comment that runs along the same line, so we can just clarify it and then move on to the next person that has their hand raised. Kathleen Murphy said, NDOT, please provide the process for sending in the petitions. How do neighbors say if they are for or against, which we just addressed, but is there a deadline to turn in petitions? That has also been asked in the chat.
Thank you very much. So there is a deadline of 6 months for the petitions where if the 70% of signatures is not achieved within 6 months, then NDOT sort of, I guess it kind of ends there. And Chris Sandwith, I want to ask you again to come off mute, make sure I'm articulating that correctly regarding that 6 month time frame.
Yeah, so in 6 months from when we started the petition process. I see Brenda asked 6 months from when. Sorry, got caught reading chat. 6 months from when we start the petition process, if we do not reach that 70%, then we will work with the neighborhood to come up with a non-physical measure solution for the neighborhood. Or if there's, a specific thing that is causing the petition to the neighbors to not be in favor, then we'll redesign at that point to come up with something that the neighborhood would be in favor of.
And then making the curb itself 15 mile and 20 mile speed limit.
Okay. In the chat, there's confusion on the no versus yes. I said in the chat that you are only signing the hard copy petition if you are for these speed cushion measures. And then if you are against them, then they will not be placed in front of your residence, which is why we would want to know your address. But there is no signing a yes or, there's no signing a no petition. There's only signing it if you are in favor of. Brad, can you clarify or agree with that?
Laura and Brad, how are you supposed to know if somebody has just not responded, or if they're opposed to the speed cushions in front of their house, if there is no option to vote against? And also, could y'all restate when this 6-month time clock started?
Yes. So again, 70%. So I guess the difference between a blank and a vote no, NDOT focuses more on was 70% or more in favor of. That is what we focus on the petition. We do not review the who was no, who just didn't want it, or who didn't respond. We're focusing on was a 70% yes achieved or not.
Brad, you told us that if the neighbor who's the speed cushion, so if a speed cushion is proposed in front of my property and I was against it, that you would work to move it potentially. How am I supposed to let you know I am against it in front of my house?
A blank response on the petition yields the same response from NDOT.
And if you get no response from a neighbor, y'all just assume no response, a neutral position?
No, assumes a no position.
No, if the petition for that address is blank and 70% is achieved, NDOT we would go out.
I think we're talking apples and oranges. So if
sorry.
I do not want the speed cushion in front of my house, I send in a blank petition. Is that what you're telling me?
No, there's one hard copy petition for each street that the neighborhood is managing. And
Hey, Brad, this is Mark. So, Laura, if you could do me a favor, when did you drop off those petitions at my house? And secondly, so I'm actually holding the petition for the Aberdeen Road. I've heard from a lot of you that have signed it.
I just put it in the chat. It's okay.
So I've got that recorded, right? Both Mayfair and Valley are being held by Paige Polk. And then Lauderdale Road is going to be held by Lauren Jeter. Now, where are the number counts right now? I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, and we've got this documented via email and signature. On Aberdeen, we're around 33. I believe we need 45 to pass. Lauderdale has very few at the moment. I believe Lauderdale's around 15 signatures. You need a lot more than that to get to your goal. And I believe Valley just needs one more to pass. So Valley's there. Mayfair, I believe, has one signature at the moment.
Okay, and I dropped off the petitions with you, Mark, on March 8th.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
And Brad, I think maybe there's confusion about the petition process in itself of whether there's a vote or anything like that. Do you have the PDF blank copy of the petition. It might be helpful for all on board if they haven't seen the petition yet to see that.
So here's an example, Chris. This is just the Valley Road petition example, but is this what you were asking for?
Yes. So I believe Councilman Murphy, I think this kind of helps with the question, but you know, it's a hard copy with all the addresses on there. And we have the homeowner sign next to the address. Once we get this back with the, if the neighborhood believes they've reached the 70% threshold, then we double check the printed names and the signature with what we have here at NDOT. It's Parcel Viewer. It shows who owns the home, and that's how we verify that the homeowner is the one that signed it and that they signed in support.
I will, I think I don't want to belabor the point tonight. This is exactly why I requested this meeting. In fact, I requested a meeting in person with mailed postcards, and I think we're going to need to do that again. I asked for the council office to do that, and I'm not sure that that NDOT translated that over to the council office to get the mailing out. I think that what would be best is let's continue on with some questions. I would like NDOT to send me a scripted out more detail of this process. By my estimate, it means that these petitions would need to be in by September 8th. Is that correct? And I'm very concerned that this process is not it's not the way that most processes are worked in Metro. The way we do rezonings, the way we do even no stop, or if you do no parking on a street. The fact that the plan can be in flux before somebody is expressing their opinion on this it is putting neighbors in a very difficult position. I know that there are lots of neighbors that want desperately to see traffic calming in Cherokee Park. I think we may have gotten the cart out before the horse here, though, to make sure that we went about this process in a very transparent way. So we will get back to questions, but I think neighbors, most likely what we're going to need to do is do an in-person meeting where we can all see these maps and make sure everybody is on the same page moving forward. So NDOT can just continue on with questions and concerns.
Okay, Laura, can you continue, please?
Yes, Lee Walton.
Of course, my dog starts barking just the right moment. I think everyone on this call is very supportive of safety in our neighborhoods, but I don't think these speed cushions are the answers. I think, to follow up on what Brenda said, we live in a beautiful neighborhood. We're historic homes, lush gardens, terrific holiday decorations. Mayfair is a sledding street, so enjoyed by young people. I think these speed cushions, and I'm primarily speaking about Mayfair because that's where I live. These speed cushions are going to annoy people to death. And I don't want people coming into our neighborhood to be constantly annoyed. There's enough annoyance in Nashville with the potholes, and I just don't think we need to exacerbate that. There are lots of problems with speed cushions. They're well documented. They cause noise, increased gas consumption. Many progressive cities have abandoned the use of them altogether. Austin, Texas, Boulder, Berkeley, Portland, both Oregon and Maine. I hear, Brad, what you're saying about stop signs, but I look at Mayfair and you've got a speed cushion between West End and the intersection just before the intersection. I fail to understand why a stop sign wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be a much better ability and device to control traffic. I just don't want people to be aggravated to death
by this. And I think there are better answers. I mean, we don't hear these complaints out of Richland Central. I echo what Jeff has said. If we continued along the four-way stops, I think we would have a much less expensive fix, a fix that's not annoying, and hopefully we'll continue to achieve the safety in our neighborhood that we're looking for.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Lee. Laura, I think you're on mute.
I am. Thank you. Rebecca Finley.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Laura. Thanks, Councilman Murphy, for allowing us to express our views and opinions on this. And thanks, Brad, as well, for the overview. Just a couple of really quick questions. I mean, I agree with Lee that I think we all know there's a safety issue. I live on Lauderdale at 221 for complete transparency. I've lived here for 5 years with my husband and my 2 kids. There's really no question that there's a safety issue at Valley and Lauderdale. I mean, my dog is barking as well. I apologize. I've probably come close to having accidents a few times. And I don't think there's a question that there's an issue at the curve at the end of Lauderdale as well. But I do wonder about the cushions. Do you have the dimensions of the cushions? I mean, do we know the height and the width? I know we saw pictures and perhaps you did share those, but I didn't see those. And just to add, I mean, I think we're treating a symptom of a bigger problem, which is really the traffic on West End Avenue and Richland Central and Cherokee Road being the cut through to get around that traffic. And I guess my question is there any greater plan to ease the traffic on West End? I mean, which is really, I think everyone on this call would surely agree that it's very bad. And, starting at 3 o'clock all the way to 6 or 7 p.m.
Right. Thank you for your comments, Rebecca. Or questions. So regarding the dimensions of the speed cushions, and if you'll please bear with me, I'm going to go back to one of the pictures. There we go. Each of those cushions or square looking things are approximately 6 feet by 7 feet. And so as you can see in this picture, there's sets of 3. I think on your streets with how narrow they are, if a 70% petition is successful, I think there'd probably be 2 of them, not 3 of them. But it's roughly 6 feet by 7 feet. And we do have the height dimensions, but of course I'm failing this part of the test because I cannot remember what the height is off the top of my head. That's something we could also follow up and send to Councilmember Murphy. I just cannot remember off the top of my head. Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you happen to remember the height of these products?
They're 3 inches tall.
Okay, thank you. And then Rebecca, I'm personally working in the neighborhood traffic calming program, so I do not have insight on your question about the greater thoughts on West End. I wanted to, I guess Chris with NDOT or Councilmember Murphy, is there any response you can provide regarding West End Avenue?
West End is something that I would love to have fixed in some way, and I've thrown out some probably ideas that I don't want to say because they'll be laughed at. I honestly, they're like reversal lanes or swapsy lanes is the only word that I could think of. But ultimately, West End, as you all know, it's a highway. It's a state road. It's how we have the scenic highway protections on it that most of us, credit to why our neighborhoods have been preserved the way they have. But so I think a lot of the problem with West End and into these neighborhoods has a lot to do with the failing intersection at White Bridge, Woodmont, Harding, West End. Yes, that's part of the problem too, right? We have 4 names for one intersection. That is a very much a failing road there. I am hoping that some upcoming development may spur that. I am only in office for about 16 more months. And it is a conversation we've had with our state representatives and senators as well. Unfortunately, it is not much of a priority for the state. So I don't see a lot of relief coming on West End in the near future.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that response, Councilmember Murphy. Laura, can you continue on with the next person, please?
Yes, Scarlett Miles.
Thanks. My questions were similar to those just asked, so appreciate it.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much, Scarlett.
Elizabeth Lee.
Sorry, unmuted. The questions that I have, I live on Valley Road, and then also we're building on the corner of Valley and Mockingbird. Are stop signs out of the question?
For a traffic calming solution to manage speeds, stop signs are not an effective tool. However, they are a traffic engineering tool for who should stop where as far as at an intersection, not speed related, but just what should be happening as far as should it be an always stop, should, like Valley, should two sides stop and two sides not stop. If NDOT does have a ability through Hub Nashville, if you are familiar with Hub Nashville, you are able to submit requests such as these for, again, it's not a traffic calming and speeding topic, but just a intersection stop sign control that can be submitted through Hub Nashville, and NDOT has a team that goes out and looks at that based on things like traffic volumes and is an always stop or a stop sign addition appropriate. That is a program. Elizabeth, I want to make sure, Chris, can you come off of mute? I want to confirm that I've summarized that that pathway correctly.
Yeah, so on the Hub Nashville, you can request an intersection to be looked at. There are engineering warrants that need to be met, mainly looking at the volume of the roads coming each way and number of accidents that happen at the intersection. So, those are the big things that are looked at when a stop sign's requested.
Should we not have gone that way to start the process?
We have had a lot of these intersections looked at over the last six years I've been in office, and a lot of them have not met the volume for the automatic approval without having to appeal for the traffic commission. But here's sorry to keep interrupting neighbors, but
no, you're great.
To Elizabeth's point, as you presented this, one of the things that is considered is putting the speed cushions in between the distances of intersections, stop signs, other traffic controls, and things like that. If we go about just entering into the hub again, a lot of these intersections to be looked at, how does that impact the decision and placement of where you are proposing these traffic cushions?
Thank you for that question, Chris. I think I'm going to yield to you on that particular question.
Yeah, it would obviously change where we would put them.
So the advice to just pop this into the hub is not the best advice.
If a neighborhood wants the stop signs looked at, I believe on the first meeting, council member, that you talked about how these intersections have been looked at previously. And so it can be looked at again, and it can change our design if it's something that an always stop does meet warrants. But from our experience of looking at these intersections, it would change our design if an all-way stop was warranted.
But in the past, NDOT previously Public Works has said that they are not warranted in these locations. So I guess what I would appreciate is NDOT to just go ahead and pull, or maybe we just need to go ahead and request every intersection looked at before this plan moves forward as well.
Can you hear me? This Brad. Can you hear me, Brad?
Yes, Brad, we can hear you.
Hey, this Brad Freeze with NDOT. Yes, we'll go ahead and do the analysis. You don't have to enter in a hub request. We'll do an analysis for each signal on this. Consider this your hub request. What you're just saying. So we won't make you go through the effort to put a hub request in. We'll go and do analysis at each of these intersections.
Great. Brad, feel free to email me. Mac Rutledge has examined, I would say, almost all of these so far. So we'll look at them
again. Yeah, we'll look at them again and do two counts again.
And hey, Brad, just to interject a little bit more, where we live on Valley Road we're in between Lauderdale and Mockingbird. And we have actually hosted some Metro policemen to sit in our driveway and arrest people that do speed there. And it's just, it's amazing. We've got children, and there was one time where people were just flying up and down. And one time we threw a ball in the street and the person ran over it and he just kept on going. And I was like, if that was a child running in the street, I mean, that's just it's just not an option. So every day I back out of my driveway and I am in total fear that somebody is going to just collide with me. And my neighbor the other day, my husband saw, and she was at the intersection of Lauderdale and Mockingbird and Valley, and she almost got nailed just because the people are they don't care. Most of the people, they're not living in our neighborhood. It's a cut through when the traffic is backed up. And that's, I don't know what else to say. That's just my point.
Yeah. So I saw in the chat someone asked for my email address. So my email address is brad.freeze, and that's at nashville.gov.
Great. Thank you very much. Laura, who's next?
Yeah, I'm just putting that in the chat. Okay. Bill Williams.
Yes. Bill, are you there?
Okay, we can
So
come back to him.
Yep.
Evelyn.
Yes, Evelyn.
There, hi. I live very close to the dangerous curve on Lauderdale. In fact, there's a 30 miles an hour sign in my yard. It's been there since we moved here in '79. And that's really too fast to be going when you're near that curve. Is it possible at the curve to have a sign that says something like, the picture of what the curve looks like and say, dangerous curve, watch for pedestrians?
Gotcha. Evelyn, thank you for that comment. I understand your question. It sounds like you're asking for, correct me, please. Are you asking if one of those yellow warning signs with the arrow that you sometimes see in front of curves can be considered by NDOT in front of those curve at Lauderdale?
Right, something like that. I mean, I'm not looking to detract from the beauty of the neighborhood, but not that long ago, somebody at night must have been intoxicated, went slamming into a mailbox and a tree there. And when we drive that curve every day, or when we walk, we're very careful to walk because you can't see who's coming. And if there's any speed involved, it's just very dangerous. So we're all interested in safety. And because I'm on that part of Lauderdale, that's my concern. I don't know what other options to have a speed bump. And the one that was mentioned is just one house away from me. And especially in the summertime when people have landscapers coming to cut their grass, it would be brump, brump, brump with great big, tractor things they have, trailers in the back. So, as somebody said, we're all interested in the safety, but we're just looking for some kind of solution that would satisfy most of us and protect people.
Right. Understood. Thank you very much, Evelyn. The curve you're referring to is one of the reasons why our team have placed the speed cushions on either end of the curve. So if people are traveling at a high rate of speed, the cushions will hopefully slow them down as they enter that curve. To your other point about the warning signs, Chris, I believe that's something that NDOT we could look at really outside of the traffic calming program, but just more of a sharp curve evaluation on whether such warning signs should be looked at. Would you agree, Chris?
Yes, that's something that we're gonna do. We're gonna get that sign installed.
There's a slower speed sign on one side, but it's not even slow enough. I mean, those of us who live here come around there very slowly. I would not want to go over the speed bump every single time I left my house because it wouldn't, you need to slow me down. But those are some thoughts. I mean, very real concerns there.
Okay. And again, NDOT looking at the warning signs is sort of totally separate from the traffic calming. That's not something we will look at that. That's one of our action items, Evelyn, to look at that warning sign that you're asking about.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, Laura.
Yeah, Bill, his microphone wasn't working, but he asked in the chat, what's the process of contacting an absentee landlord, which he is.
Gotcha. So, so property owners are the only ones who can sign it. And so if people like Mark or whoever in the neighborhood is leading the petitions, comes across a resident who's a renter, then there's a few options. The first option is that you all are free to ask the renter, could you share this with your landlord, assuming they're the property owner, and ask for their support. We've had that happen in a few other neighborhoods, and what NDOT's position is if they're not in the area of Nashville, but they want to voice in support or in opposition, they can send an email to that person in the neighborhood who's leading it. And as long as we see that email documentation saying they own this property address, and we match it with parcel viewer and it's correct, and they say they support it, we are trying to be flexible and handle absentee property owners in that fashion. Chris, I want to make sure, have I misspoken or have I articulated that correctly as well?
No, that's correct. And I see someone asked also, do husband and wife get 2 votes? It's one vote per household. So
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, great.
Catherine McGill.
Thank you. I know I asked a question earlier, but I do have another one. And also just a comment. I've been a real estate agent in Nashville for over 30 years. And basically, when I drive through neighborhoods and showing high-end homes, and there's anything that's like this, there's a negative comment from the buyers. It's not something that people want to live in. And it's really not something that is going to increase our property values at all. And it's going to create negative comments from buyers. It doesn't give us that historic feeling that makes this neighborhood so wonderful. The other thing is, I understand the safety issues on some of the streets, but Mayfair, for example, where they're proposing to put the cushion, is right in front of the triangle, which is where the street splits there, and that's a little park there, and kids are in there all the time playing, and kids ride their bikes to the triangle, and people walk to the triangle, and it's going to look horrible. It's just going to not be. I mean, there's a sign that I even paid for to have repaired myself that says Cherokee Park, whatever, and it's a big, but it's not something that is going to enhance our neighborhood at all. And I agree that if stop signs or warning signs or curb signs are to be used, I'm totally in favor of whatever the neighbors want. But I don't even know what the cushions are going to look like. I've seen 2 different pictures. I've seen some that have yellow stripes down them, some of those others that have white stripes down them. And you talk about the Hub Nashville situation with calling them or going online. I've gone online 3 times and asked for someone to look at the damage to the asphalt that the Google Fiber did and in front of my house, and they've never even responded. And I've still not had anyone out to look at it. And it's horrible. It's getting worse by the day. But Hub Nashville's not responded to my online request 3 times. So
Catherine,
not a lot of faith in that, to be honest.
understood. Catherine, thank you for your comments. And just out of curiosity, because I'm not aware of the Google Fiber situation, do you happen to know what department the Hub Nashville was it pavement? Was it NDOT? Is that?
I went on and did it 2 different places I called and talked to somebody, and they told me to do it another place. I gave up. It's been several months ago when the Google Fiber went through, and they tore the street up and they didn't fix it back, and it's all gravel there in front of the driveway and everything. And
Catherine, Catherine, if you will, send me your hub numbers, the hub case numbers, or if you can remember around the dates that you may have turned it in, or any email correspondence. And
I don't remember. I'll be honest with you. But I know that I filled it out and I did
well,
it
just
3 times.
if you'll just give me send me the location. I just dropped my email in the chat again, and I'll have the council office follow up.
Yeah, that's fine. And
All of that is under NDOT. So I mean,
Yeah,
y'all
okay.
push it off on the different departments, but right away is all NDOT.
Yeah,
So
but
Catherine,
I'm
just shoot me an
totally,
email.
I think it would be bad for our property values to have those things.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Catherine. All right, Laura.
Okay, T. Sava. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but
Hey, Brett, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Trevor Sava. I actually live at that corner y'all have been talking about at Lauderdale 239. So I appreciate you thinking of us. We've had some cars in our yard, and we have 3 little boys that go up and down our driveway, and yeah, that corner is constantly on our mind. The one thing I was just concerned with was if we look at, Lauderdale Road, for example, and you have 6 cushions, and acknowledging that that corner is one of, I guess, the big concern for Lauderdale. Is it a one or done deal where it's either all 6 cushions or none at all? Or is there a way to address that corner without voting for all the 6 cushions? Are there
Right.
different
I
ways of asking that?
I understand your question. I just want to make sure I understand. Are you asking, is it basically all of Lauderdale, or if a section does not support it, but another section does, do we approach it section by section? Is that getting your question correctly?
Yes, I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is I'd be very much in favor of addressing our corner, and maybe putting up a mirror so you can see people coming in from the opposite direction. But I guess I'm a little bit more concerned of voting for 6 cushions altogether.
Gotcha. Yeah, the reason for the 6 cushions is again based on that location from stop signs, location between each cushion, because too close is not ideal, but also spreading them out too far can allow speeders, if they want to speed, to maybe get a little faster in between the cushions. So that was the reason for the spacing and the 6 along all of Lauderdale. We had not anticipated on breaking up the roads into, I guess, smaller segments. That was not NDOT's plan to do that, I guess, to answer your question.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right.
okay.
Laura.
Dave Bowman.
Yes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I think there have been some great comments in general. I agree. My wife agrees strongly with what the comments from Lee Walton and Brenda Freeman. We don't think these cushions are all consistent with the beautiful historic neighborhood. More specifically, we saw cushions in the proposal. We've seen different cushions tonight. We don't have any kind of a diagram about how they'll be deployed. It's been mentioned previously, Aberdeen's a very narrow street. We don't know whether the cushions are going to be across the full width or a portion of it. I would submit that really this process needs to start over, and there needs to be more description of how this is going to be done before somebody can make an informed decision of this magnitude for the neighborhood. I certainly would encourage the meeting that the council person suggested in person, but there just hasn't been enough information out there, I think, for people to make a truly informed decision. And it is a dramatic change to our neighborhood to have all of these industrial looking devices implanted on their streets. For example, if they run the full width of the street and no curbs, what's to keep cars from veering around the cushions and damaging the lawns or planting beds of people that own those adjacent houses? Again, I think we're all in favor of making the neighborhood safer. My wife and I have lived here for 30 years. Our neighbor across the street's been in her house for 50. We're both strongly opposed to this. I just think it's a sledgehammer for a problem that could be addressed with other more traditional methods. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Dave.
Okay, Elizabeth.
I was actually just I actually sent it by mistake. Just on another note, just the intersection that the end of Cherokee turning right on West End that is like womp womp womp, and I spill my coffee every day. Just another little tidbit of maybe put on the list to smooth out possibility.
Okay.
Just
So just make sure I understand. You're commenting on the I guess I'm gonna say use the word bumpiness of Cherokee right near West End signal. Is that your comment?
Yes. So if you're at the end of Cherokee and you're turning right or left onto West End, if you turn right onto West End, your coffee is going flying all over your car because it's like this. And I would be happy to go and slab out some concrete, but I might get in trouble.
Okay. No. Okay. Understood.
Just a look, dude. All right. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay. Jeff Jones.
I'll talk a little slower this time. I have a little bit of a concern if you're voting per street. There, Mayfair and Cherokee, there is only one house, two houses. I apologize. Jack and the attached new units at Lauderdale. So you box of people that are affected that aren't even going to get a vote. And because the only homes are from North Wilson to Mayfair. Those are the only homes that face the road. So people to vote on everything that's going to affect the people that live on. I don't think that's right either. Thanks.
Right. And so, Jeff, I apologize. I heard most of it. You were cutting out a little bit. I do want to clarify, using Valley Road as an example, if a property owner has an address along Valley, or if they do not, but their property still is along Valley Road as well. For instance, at the corner of Valley and Lauderdale, there may be a home that has a Lauderdale address, but their home is also on Valley. That home is eligible for both Valley Road and on the Lauderdale Road petition.
No.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Celeste.
So I am concerned about signage that also goes along with these speed humps. I've seen it over in Hillsborough West End, where there's a big yellow sign that says speed hump, or something on the road that says hump before each one of these painted on the road. Again, visually, I don't want to see that here. I don't want to be driving up my pretty street and see the signs for this.
Okay, thank you for that comment. And in this design, painting the word hump on the road is not part of the design. However, putting the yellow diamond signs that say speed hump are part of the design. So so understand Celeste's comment. I just want to make sure we clarified that the markings on the road, the hump, are not part of the design, but those signs, at least at the first one along a street, are part of the design. Just want to make sure we're informing everybody of what the design shows. All right, Laura.
Yeah, well, Councilman Murphy, will you clarify what comment Elizabeth made? What concern you were referring to in your chat?
Elizabeth requested, she asked if it's possible to look at moving the bumps. And I was just clarifying that NDOT has determined that this is a process that is between them and the neighborhoods. Hence, the applications are solely put together for traffic calming are solely put together by neighbors applying. Then this meeting, I had to request it, and y'all did not want to do an in-person meeting. You did not want to mail things out. I think there are lots of people who are in support of traffic calming, but like I said earlier, this has gotten very far down the road in design before a lot of neighbors had input for or against. We will have another meeting. I am happy to host it in person and do a virtual one with or without NDOT, whether y'all want to participate or not, in person or not. And I will ensure that the council office mails out the information in advance of the meeting. I think there's a lot more to discuss before this moves forward. And I just think that this is something where I'm sorry, neighbors, to sound a little bit very critical tonight, but I have requested a meeting with the new NDOT director to discuss this very thing. I think this has gotten a little bit far out on its skis before it was thought through, and you may be for this, but your clock is ticking on that there's a 6-month window to get petitions and to educate neighbors on what the options are, and I don't think that clock should be ticking before we have a meeting with over 40 people on it. So let's continue on with questions from neighbors. But neighbors, please feel free to email me, and I will work with your neighborhood leaders to get another meeting set up in the next, what is it? We're early April, so in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Can I ask one question? Sorry, this is Dee Dee Wade. Kathleen, thank you for all that feedback. And I came on late to this, but my question is, seeing what's you said that we need to make it look how it's going to be acceptable to everyone, but to see how it's worked, I drive through Sweetbriar a lot, and I drive through Love Circle, and they've both done these certain things, and then Chickering Lane. So maybe there's a way to make it work for us how it's worked for them in certain ways, and it definitely seemed to help. It slows me down when I drive through there. So just a comment.
I agree. We've definitely seen the ways when the 51st, if y'all remember, this is probably about 5 years ago, 51st Avenue was redone and there were speed humps there. And for a very long time, speed cushions, speed humps, tables, they were called tables where I went to college, whatever you call them, they were out of the traffic calming program altogether. They just recently have come back into Nashville's traffic calming program. I feel that we need to have further discussion before this is decided upon.
Yeah, just to kind of chime in there too. So Kathleen, we greatly appreciate you organizing this. But your name and email was included on 100% of this communication. So a little bit concerned about you coming in and challenging what we've done to date. Because a lot of us have done a lot of work. So try and look on the other side of that. But we'd be glad to have future meetings for sure.
Great. Laura, who's next?
Yes, there's Evelyn has her hand up, and then Celeste, I think this is from your previous question, but you can go after Evelyn if you have an additional follow-up question.
One of our neighbors mentioned a mirror on both sides of the dangerous curve. Is that done? That's just, it sounds like a great idea, because then at least you could see what's coming. It won't slow down the speeders probably. Those of us who are pedestrians will at least know, and those of us who are carrying drivers there. Is that one of the, what do you use those?
Evelyn, I will tell you from a personal experience, I have never recommended a mirror for traffic engineering. That I'm speaking personally, not on behalf of NDOT, but personally. First of all, my first concern is how big would the mirror need to be so cars can actually see each other? The other thought is, at night, would the headlights possibly bounce off of a mirror and actually blind possibly a car coming from the opposite side? That's my personal opinion. What I will do is I will coordinate with NDOT. Putting my NDOT hat on, I will talk with NDOT in the next few days about if that is being done in Nashville to confirm if there's a different opinion other than the one I just shared, but those are my immediate thoughts as a traffic engineer.
Well, that's the kind of thing that we need to hear. We don't know. We are not engineers,
Right.
but
Right.
we would love to have people slow down there and it make
Right.
a safer place to walk. Thank you.
Understood. Yes, ma'am. All right, Laura.
Yeah. Dee Dee?
No, nothing else. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I do have one thing to say. I lived in Franklin, and Old Hillsborough Road, where we did have the mirrors, and those roads were a lot busier, but they did not do very well. So that was just that area, though.
Okay. No, thank you for that input from the Franklin area.
Okay, Celeste?
I didn't have another question, but I do want some clarification now that I'm thinking about it. So the people that have their property that has two different streets, do they get two votes, or just with their address? You said this a minute ago, but I wasn't sure I understood the answer.
Yeah, so thank you for asking. I'm going to use the intersection of Valley and Lauderdale as one example. If there is a property whose house is right on the corner of Lauderdale and Valley, their address is eligible for the petition for Valley Road, and their address is on the petition eligible for Lauderdale Road. So that because they have property on each road, regardless of where their mailbox is or their mailing address, that's how we approach properties that are along a road, especially on the corner lots. Does that clarify, Celeste?
It does. I don't like the answer, but I hear you.
Okay, understood. Yeah, we understood.
Okay, no one else's hand is raised. Oh, Lauren.
Yeah, Lauren. Laura, is there anybody else or?
Yeah, now there is Brant.
Yes, Brant. I'm able to hear you, Laura, so I know I'm hearing sound, but I'm not able to hear Lauren or Brant.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes, there you
Okay,
are.
sorry. It's been a long day, and I'm sorry for just jumping on, but our 7-year-old just got done with practice not too long ago. I jumped on at the point where somebody was making the comment about, using other methods other than putting in the speed cushions. And so, as somebody who has a 7-year-old and we're pretty active over here, I'd really like to hear what these other methods are, because there have been, and forgive me, but
yeah. So no,
and forgive me, but this is a very personal subject for me. I know a lot of other people on here have lived here for many years, but we've been over here almost 8, and but it's personal for me because I have an almost 8-year-old, and not only has he, but myself, my husband, my next door neighbor Dee Dee, the people that live next door who have 2 small children, we've had to scurry out of the street more than one time. So I'd like to know what the other methods are, what sort of ideas everybody has. I'm not opposed to them, but something's got to be done. So
right. So yeah, so Lauren, I'll be happy to elaborate on that. So some of the other options we considered were along some of the other streets like Aberdeen, Valley, Lauderdale, Mayfair, some additional apologies. I'm going to try to bring up a picture while I'm doing this, and my apologies for the delay. Some additional radar speed feedback signs. We heard from the residents we were recording with. We heard some negative input on streets like Aberdeen and Valley and Mayfair and Lauderdale. So we removed this option for further consideration. This is one additional.
There's one in Hickory Valley, and it doesn't do anything. So yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I appreciate it. Appreciate the option, but.
Right. And to your point, at NDOT, we have installed some locations. We have seen some benefits in speed reduction at some locations. Other locations, that's not been the case. It truly depends on the location. Sometimes it has worked, sometimes it has not worked. So regarding anyways, that was removed from consideration for these other 4 streets: Aberdeen, Valley, Mayfair, and Lauderdale. And I apologize, I'm trying to go back to the presentation.
No, and again, I'm sorry I jumped on it at the end, but this is important.
Absolutely. We want to make sure we're
and to my
informing.
family.
So the speed cushions are what have been proposed. Another option is something called a speed table. It's basically a larger, longer piece of block that looks like this. So instead of these smaller speed cushions where there's gaps in between, it's a much larger piece where there's no gaps. That was another option. It would have the similar effect. It just costs a little more at each location and it takes up more room. But we ultimately proposed the speed cushions because they are a little more cost effective. That was the thought for these. Another thing we did look at was traffic circles. We looked at some neighborhood traffic circles at a few of your intersections, which aren't quite as big as roundabouts that we drive through on bigger roads, but they're kind of smaller. There's a few examples around Nashville of neighborhood traffic circles. The struggle we found was with how narrow your roads are. We could not find a way to fit a circle in any of your intersections and still have cars be able to turn and make left turns around it. It would have required a little more impact to people's property, and that is not something the traffic calming program gets involved in. We don't want to do any sort of right-of-way anything. And so we did look at traffic circles, but kind of realized there weren't any appropriate spots in Cherokee Park because of the narrow streets.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing is it's either the speed cushions or the speed humps at this point. That's what I'm getting.
Based on the input we heard in our design evaluation, that those would be the 2 things that we feel would be most effective at managing vehicle speeds.
Unless we got stop signs.
So stop signs are not an effective way of managing vehicle speeds. So
not on I'll say this, not on Aberdeen, and not on this end of Lauderdale.
Gotcha. And I just want to make sure, Lauren, can you elaborate on that just for my own education on what?
Well,
what
there's
you're
a
meaning by
stop
this
sign
point?
at the corner of at the 3-way. There's a 3-way stop at Mockingbird and Aberdeen, and there's a significant stretch between that 3-way stop and the 4-way stop that's on Wilson and where Aberdeen turns into Princeton. And man, they come flying through there.
Okay.
So, and they come flying around this corner here where it meets up at Aberdeen too.
And this corner, is that this corner at Lauderdale?
I live at 321 Lauderdale.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood the street
Yeah.
location when you're referring to.
Yeah, I live at 321 Lauderdale, so I'm not far from the pork chop median. And there's a significant curve right there where at 325, 323, that people just come barreling down.
Okay.
So.
Great. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for your comments, Lauren. All right, Laura, who else do we have?
Yeah, Brant, do you still have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify something. You guys had done your quantitative diligence in terms of speed and number of cars coming through on Cherokee, Aberdeen, and Valley. Is that correct?
The data from two and a half years ago before the pandemic that studied your neighborhood collected data on Cherokee and Aberdeen. It did not collect data on Valley.
Okay, and also you have no data on Lauderdale and Mayfair, correct?
Correct.
And your diligence included just a walkthrough of the neighborhood on one day?
A walk through the neighborhood, our engineering design of effective traffic calming on streets, regardless of volume on them, input from neighbors, and also knowing that the funding amount that's available for traffic calming program, that all of those things were considered.
Yeah, it seems like you're trying to paste bumps everywhere that, when there's no data to support it. And if you're going to be making changes to and get people on board, you really should have the data behind it. Without seeing it, I don't see how a lot of people are going to vote for it. I agree that there does need to be better safety protocols in place, but I don't know that the solution is just to paste traffic bumps everywhere, and to not talk to, not to consider stop signs. I mean, that, yeah, the Lauderdale and Valley intersection is bad. It's a two-way stop, and I think one reason is that, one, people don't stop when they're going down Valley, and two, those people going down Valley assume that the people crossing over Lauderdale tend to might have a stop sign, but they don't. So it's just being able to talk to different groups would be helpful in terms of a solution for the neighborhood.
No, appreciate your comments, Brant.
Okay, Dave.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to address the comment that was just recently made about the three-way stop at Mockingbird. As I mentioned, we've lived in our house on Aberdeen in that stretch between Wilson and Mockingbird for 30 years. And I can tell you unequivocally that stop sign had a dramatic impact on traffic speeds. Now, it would be nice if we had the data that could either support that or refute that, but I haven't seen anything. And I also wonder whether this data was collected before or after the three-way stop sign was implemented, or if you know when it was. It just seems like that this vote is being taken on fairly scant data without giving people the opportunity to truly evaluate whether this is the best approach or whether other approaches wouldn't work or would or wouldn't work. I mean, I know you had a picture of a manual about traffic control or speed control that's applies generally across the country, but our laboratory is right next door in Richland. Almost every four-way intersection, to my knowledge, has 4 stop signs on it, and they seem to work well. It just seems, again, that we're just skirting or skating past time-tested methods of controlling speeds that work in the adjacent neighborhood. I also, again, would request that you send out a description, a more specific description of what these speed humps are going to look like. We've seen 2 different varieties of them so far, and how they'll be actually implemented on a street. Aberdeen's about 20 feet wide. How will they fill that 20 feet? Will there be a gap for kids riding on small bikes with training wheels? Or are they going to have to try to trundle over them? Are women or men pushing strollers up and down the street with children? Are they going to have to try to push them over it? Again, I just think it would serve everyone's interest if there was better information about how this is actually going to be implemented.
I understand your comment, Dave. I think we can accommodate your request for essentially a more detailed dimensioning of what these cushions would look like on the road. Understand your comment, and that's something NDOT can provide.
So I want to comment real quick. I live at 4022 Aberdeen, and I'm one house away from the 3 stop sign from Mockingbird and Aberdeen, and I see people fly through that stop sign on a daily basis. And it was put in about 2 or 3 years ago. Mark put it in. Grateful for it did, because we have a dog. We don't have kids, but they fly through that stop sign on a daily basis. So that's my input. I'm for the speed cushions.
I'd like to ask one clarification just to make sure we understand. When you say they fly, are they stopping at the stop sign and then flying or traveling fast? Or are you saying they are not stopping at the stop sign? I just want to make sure we understand.
I've seen both multiple times.
Okay.
Multiple. And we have kids on all sides of our house.
Okay. No, thank you for that comment and feedback.
Hey, Brad, Mark has asked in the chat to share in the design plans in the PDF. You were showing the image of the cushions on the pages that have cushions.
Yes, I will try to.
Yeah, I tried to send a picture in the chat, but
So
here.
And I think, Dave, you mentioned this. So we do need to update this picture. That speed cushions would not look like this. So I do understand the comment that is being offered about this one has yellow lines. I understand the comment. We can certainly address that. This picture is a much more accurate representation. So I understand. We have not typically heard a comment from neighborhoods on the colors of paint on the cushions. It's more so, do they want the cushions to manage speeds or not? But we do understand, acknowledge that comment in question, and we can address that on that design, and we can handle that.
And also, Dave, to add on top of that, both these pictures show a 3 wide setup.
That's true.
on a narrower street like the ones that y'all have in your neighborhood, it'll most likely be a 2 setup, only one in each lane. So they're each 6 feet wide, 7 foot long. So so there's gaps in between on all the sides.
Okay, no one else has their hand raised right now.
Okay. Yeah, I know we're a little past time, but we're always glad to be in discussion. I think Jeff, has he just raised his hand?
Yes, and I'm not sure the name, DSTEINE.
Yeah, let's help Jeff. Jeff, are you on mute? Oh, there we go. Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. There's a really bad echo. I'm able to hear you quite clearly, but there's an echo that's making it trouble for me.
We can't hear him.
Is that better?
We can't hear him.
Hello?
We can't hear him.
Yeah, Jeff, we're struggling to hear you. Jeff, can you possibly send your comment in the chat?
Is that better? Yeah, it kicked me out, and then I had to get back in.
Hey, Laura, could you mute Jeff? Jeff, if you could maybe post in the chat or send an email. We're having trouble with your sound. I apologize. Okay, Laura, can we go on the next person, please?
Yes. That is the DST.
Yes, hi,
Yeah.
this is, hi, Patty Stein.
Okay.
I just have a question now again about the drainage because that's kind of gotten lost from the beginning of the session tonight. But we have the one drain, storm drain in front of our home, which is on the curve that captures the entire water flow from all of Lauderdale Road all the way back as far as Mayfair. And it very effectively, as I've mentioned in numerous emails, catches the water that flows down in a huge quantity. I mean, you would have to see it to believe how much water flows down to that one drain. Now there is the speed humps proposed right up the street from the drain. I believe somewhere around we're 234. It's probably around, I don't know what it is, but it's right up from the drain. All your conversation about the neighborhoods not having drain issues that you're aware of, I addressed in the chat, do these neighborhoods have curb and gutter that also help then direct the water flow? Our street has no curbs, no gutters. I still don't understand how this large quantity of water is going to flow down the street and get over those speed cushions to get into the drain like it does now. In fact, there is so much water sometimes, and I don't mind going and cleaning it off. I do it so that the water can drain correctly. But there are literally people's landscape rocks that end up on the drain after heavy rains that I clear off. That's how much the power of the water coming down in the volume. So what is going to happen to that water when if there were these speed cushions? Is it just going to go into the yards that are prior to the speed cushions?
Right. No, I understand your comment. Chris, can you speak to that? I know you said you talked to the stormwater group a little more, I think, than I personally have.
Yes, and we can follow up with the water services again to make sure that what we've talked about previously with them is still the case. So we'll follow up with them and give an answer, make sure we're giving you the right answer from water services as well. So
I just wonder, when you say there are no reported studies of issues of drainage problems, do those streets have curb and gutter? That's my question.
Some, yes, many do not.
Are they a downhill slope where the water is flowing at rapid, intense volume and speed down the street.
Right. That I admit I cannot answer off the top of my head. I understand the question you're asking, but I do not know that
Because
answer.
right now, the one storm drain, believe it or not, it functions very well. The water flows right into it at a gushing rate.
Patty, I'm at I'm at 323. Let me talk to you. I've been here 18 years, and in 2010, when we had to try to get the storm drains cleaned out. Let me come talk to you about that.
Oh, I don't have any problem going and just moving after the storm. It's not, it just.
Let me just come talk to you about it.
Okay. I'm not complaining about it.
Because I think I'm at the end of the storm drain.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Laura, who else do we have?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions or comments? Okay, well, we really appreciate it. And I want to ask, is Councilmember Murphy still on the call? Would you like to close it out, Councilmember Murphy?
I think we're good. I think our plan forward from here is that we do need to have another meeting. I will coordinate that with NDOT and the council office to make sure that mailers are sent out and some more notices with these pictures and plans. I will get out as well to distribute through my email list, and then if y'all will share it on your listserv, and then I'm happy I can my website admittedly is not as up to date as it should be, but I can drop them on there. That way, if anybody is not on either listserv, they can view them that way. So thank you, NDOT. I know a lot of work has gone into this. Thank you, neighbors. And from here, let's just try to make sure that we are thinking through what will best serve the whole community.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.